Welcome everyone to the last program of the year for Sunday Mornings with Twitchy Women. Today we welcome Lori Ramig and Heather Hodges from LSVT Global, and they will be speaking about their work with Google's Project Euphonia. So welcome Lori and Heather.
My name is Lori Ramig, and I'm here with Heather Hodges. We're delighted to be invited to speak with your group. When I heard from Sharon the name, I was enchanted. Twitchy Woman, I think it's wonderful. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to do just a brief overview of speech disorders and Parkinson's disease. And then, as Sharon mentioned, maybe in the next year, we can come back and do a longer session on speech and speech treatment. What we want to talk about today is this project Euphonia that we're doing with Google. And it's a very exciting project. So I'll talk about speech disorders a bit and a little bit of the intro on the project, and then Heather will dig in and tell you exactly what happens should you volunteer to participate in this project. We've been doing it now for over a year with Google. For this phase, our goal is to get 400 individuals, and so far we have 100. So over the next 3 months or so, we need to get lots of individuals with Parkinson's to participate, and we'll talk more about that. But thank you so much for being here. We're delighted, and on with the show. Next slide, Heather. We greet you from many places. I happen to live in New York City right now and am an adjunct professor at Columbia University. For many years, I lived at the University of Colorado Boulder, basically, probably almost 25 years as a professor, and ran research studies funded by the National Institutes of Health, and much of the data were collected at the National Center for Voice and Speech in Denver. And Heather worked there as well. And so we've had a nice long-term relationship. Next slide. We also greet you from Tucson, Arizona, which is the headquarters for LSVT Global, which is our company that trains speech clinicians and physical therapists all over the world in efficacious voice therapy, physical and occupational therapy targeting Parkinson's disease. So we're spread all over the US, and we eagerly are here visiting with you today. Next slide. Our plan for the time we have today is to talk about speech and voice disorders in Parkinson's disease briefly, about Project Euphonia, how you can participate in Project Euphonia, and then we will have time for questions and answers. So it'll be an informal presentation, and we're very eager to answer any questions you have, so we will leave time to do that for certain. Next slide. So over 89% of individuals with Parkinson's disease suffer from voice and speech disorders. So it's really common for individuals to have characteristics such as reduced vocal loudness, hoarse voice, monotone voice, and imprecise articulation. These are the classic features in Parkinson's disease, and as you can see by these citations listed below, have been very well studied. I would say in the area of neurological voice disorders, the literature on Parkinson's disease is probably the largest literature. These voice and speech disorders contribute to lifelong frustration, embarrassment, and social isolation. And as you know, it's no fun if people can't understand you when you're trying to communicate, especially with background noise in restaurants or parties, etc. And one of my patients in New York really nailed it. If I have no voice, I have no life. So this is a very pervasive problem in Parkinson's disease and has a negative impact on quality of life in patients. Next slide. The origin of the speech and voice disorders is actually very complex. And we've been studying this for almost 25 years. And one of the key reasons people have speech and voice disorders in Parkinson's is the same hypokinesia or reduced amplitude of movement that affects the arms and the legs, etc., affects the muscles of speech production. And thus there's a reduced amplitude of movement across the entire speech mechanism. There's also a pervasive sensory disorder. And you may have experienced this if you feel like you're talking as you always have, but your family says, speak up. You're a little bit soft. You need to talk louder. That's a reality. And people with Parkinson's disease don't often recognize that. Some of our patients will say to us, it seems like the whole world needs a hearing aid. No one can really hear me right now. And this is a reality of Parkinson's. It's part of the disorder. And then there's what we call an internal cueing disorder. Parkinson results in the disruption of the internal cue or trigger for movements. Patients do not self-initiate. So a patient may be in the room with the speech clinician and he or she is asking them to get louder. When they're giving them an external cue to get louder, they can do it very easily. But when they walk out of the speech therapy room, their ability to internally cue themselves is challenging. So this is a good reason why speech therapy has never worked before for Parkinson's disease until LSVT. So the reduced amplitude of movement, a sensory disorder, and an internal cueing disorder are key elements underlying the speech disorder in Parkinson's disease. Next slide. So we have been researching this for many, many years, funded by the National Institutes of Health, and we have established both the short and long-term efficacy for LSVT loud in 3 randomized controlled trials. And randomized controlled trials are really the gold standard of evidence for any kind of treatment. For example, they couldn't distribute COVID vaccinations until there were randomized controlled trial data or evidence. And so what's very exciting is we do have this evidence for LSVT loud. So on the left, you see the speech mechanism, and it has this mechanism in the respiratory system, the vocal cords, the vocal tract, has this hypokinesia or reduced amplitude of movement, and out comes this soft, monotone, hoarse voice. Click, Heather. Now, when we work on LSVT loud, what we do is we scale up amplitude across the entire speech mechanism. You can see the respiratory system improves, vocal cord closure improves, mouth opening improves. Out comes a louder, more intelligible speech production. And we do this by working on healthy vocal loudness. And we'll talk more about this in another visit to see you, but this is really fundamentally what happens in the world of Parkinson's. What's very exciting is previous types of speech therapy would say to a patient, take a deep breath, open your mouth, slow down, have intonation, have better articulation, and now talk. Whereas what we have learned in LSVT is we can have one single target of increasing healthy vocal loudness, and things change across the entire speech production mechanism with limited cognitive load. Patients are able to think of only one thing, and all of those changes occur across their speech mechanism. And we've measured all those changes and published articles documenting those changes in our research. On the lower left, you see the website for LSVT Global. And if you go there, you'll see examples of patients before and after treatment, which is very exciting. Next slide. So today, LSVT loud is the global standard for speech treatment for Parkinson's disease. We have over 21,000 LSVT loud certified clinicians in 78 countries, and we have an allied physical therapy called LSVT Big, over 29,000 LSVT Big certified clinicians in 55 countries. We were speaking earlier about before COVID, we used to fly all over the world and do all these trainings, but we've learned with COVID, we can do a lot of training virtually and on Zoom like we're doing now. And so while we miss the international travel, and we will get back to some of that, we hope, it really is very efficient to be able to do these trainings online. And it helps clinicians too, because they don't have to fly somewhere and get a hotel and do all of those things. So a little bit of silver lining with COVID. Next slide. So here's the deal. Now that you understand the voice and speech disorders of reduced loudness, hoarseness, monotone, imprecise articulation, it makes sense if a patient has these problems that automatic speech recognition like Siri, etc., can't understand them. And patients struggle trying to communicate with automatic speech recognition systems. Next slide. And that has been the motivation for Project Euphonia at Google. Project Euphonia is an early stage research project initiated by Google to increase accessibility to automatic speech recognition by speakers with impaired speech. So this is really important because when you think of, you call the airlines or anybody you call now has automatic speech recognition in addition to Siri and other types of systems. And it can be very frustrating when those systems cannot understand disordered speech. So the goal for Project Euphonia is to allow these speakers with disordered speech to interact with everyday technology, smart devices, computer phones, etc., to maintain their independence, safety, and enhance communication and quality of life. It's a very well motivated project that can have a very positive impact on quality of life for patients. Next slide. So the step one in this whole process is to teach speech recognition algorithms to understand disordered speech. And in order to help them understand disordered speech, we need to give them a lot of samples of disordered speech. And that's what we're doing when we collaborate with Google. Next slide. So because of our over 20 years of experience collecting data from patients with Parkinson's disease, we were invited to collaborate with Google to bring voices and speech of individuals with Parkinson's disease into Project Euphonia. Next slide. So what we've been working on is helping them build a database for automatic speech recognition in Parkinson's disease. And it's been very exciting. We started working with them over a year ago and developed a methodology and a way to gather data that Heather will talk with you about. And we've presented a number of papers, and there are a number of articles in submission demonstrating the product of this work. Next slide.
And right here is where we have the video, including Bob
Okay.
McDonald's work.
Super.
We'll play that.
Hello, we are presenting our work on building a database for automatic speech recognition in Parkinson's disease. I am Professor Lori Ramig of LSVT Global, and I am joined by Dr. Bob McDonald of Google. The objective of this presentation is to describe the rationale and process for acquiring speech data to contribute to increasing accessibility to speech recognition for patients with Parkinson's disease. Disordered speech and voice may limit access to everyday voice-activated devices such as mobile phones, smart speakers, etc. These devices have automatic speech recognition systems that have been trained on non-disordered speech. This makes it frustrating for individuals with speech disorders, such as those accompanying Parkinson's disease, to utilize these devices. Project Euphonia is an initiative by Google to make speech technology more accessible to individuals with non-standard speech. For example, ALS, Down syndrome, stroke, cleft palate, cerebral palsy. The first step in this process is to gather large numbers of speech samples from disordered speakers in order to train speech recognition systems. This paper reports our initial work to collect speech data from individuals with Parkinson's disease to contribute to this project. Because of our over 20 years of research on speech and voice in Parkinson's disease, our research team at LSVT Global was invited to collaborate on Project Euphonia. After a series of pilot studies, procedures were established to optimize successful data collection supported by speech mentors. Screening procedures were established for technology, cognitive, motor challenges, and potential home support. Recruiting was expanded to include 8 major Parkinson's disease organizations. By completion of the final pilot study, over 75,000 phrases were collected from patients with PD, MSA, CBD, and PSP. Outcomes of the speech recognition data analysis are reported here. Looking to the far right in the circle, you can see that the word error rate was improved by approximately 80% for speakers rated as mild, moderate, and severe. We had a very limited sample of profound speakers, and there was only a 24% improvement there. Now, Dr. McDonald will briefly summarize the results of Project Euphonia from a larger group of individuals with non-standard speech.
Speech samples from more than 1,000 individuals with impaired speech have been collected for Project Euphonia. Our research aim is to improve automated speech recognition systems to better understand disordered speech, and our strategy is to build upon advances in end-to-end deep neural networks that have proven so effective at improving accuracy for typical speech. In this poster, we provide an overview of the corpus, which recently passed 1 million utterances. We also review key lessons learned, particularly those related to scaling data collections and effectively powering machine learning research. As of February of this year, our corpus includes over 1,300 hours of utterances from individuals with impaired speech. In fact, 579 individuals have exceeded 300 phrases. The utterance corpus spans a wide variety of disorders, etiologies, and severities. Some lessons learned include ensuring privacy and consent details are robust and clear. Critically important is active and continuous involvement with advocacy groups and individuals in these communities. Regarding the speech type and platform, our focus has been on scalability and transcript quality. This led us to prioritize prompted speech to enable high transcript accuracy. Samples were recorded from user devices rather than in a sound booth. The accompanying noise and acoustic artifacts were mitigated using a combination of manual and automated reviews. We kept participant burden in mind when constructing phrase lists, preferring shorter phrases over long paragraphs. These phrases span several domains that were chosen based on the use cases for eventual products that we envision, such as home automation or conversations. Progress in creating ever more accurate ASR models required increasing investment in quality control. The net result of the data and extensive machine learning research is a method for building personalized ASR models, where word error rate is reduced by 75% relative to the out-of-the-box unadapted speech recognition models. In fact, for over 80% of the personalized models, the word error rate was below 15% in the home automation domain. We present details about this ML research in a companion paper. We hope that sharing this information will allow other teams conducting research or collecting data related to disordered speech to more efficiently advance their work. And we'd really like to acknowledge the contributions from thousands of people and partnerships that have helped power this research.
Our conclusions and current goals for Parkinson's disease: a feasible data collection procedure has been established for Parkinson's disease, and the project will scale up to include larger numbers of patients, disorders, and dialects. Our target now is to collect data on 400 patients. In order to do this, we need to screen 1,000 patients. Thus, we need your patience. With that in mind, we invite you to join Google and LSVT in Project Euphonia to help individuals with Parkinson's disease gain access to automatic speech recognition. To learn more, contact us at either email or my personal email, and we'd be delighted to talk with you more about the project. In conclusion, we offer thanks to the Parkinson's community for their important collaboration throughout this work. Hello. So now Heather will give you a snapshot of the project and how you can help.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the background. And I think that video is just so key to pointing out how many voices, how many hours. I think Bob McDonald said they had 13,000 hours of recordings working to get these speech recognition software systems better at understanding folks who have voice and speech changes or disorders. So we truly do have a big need to make the technology continue to improve. And so with this, we recognized in working with Project Euphonia and with the participants, the patients who were taking part in the research, that it really was helpful to give more information about the process. We also found that it was much more successful if the participants had a mentor or a guide along the process to help with enrollment, to help with screening the voice and the speech of those interested in the study, and to just help with setting up the technology so that it's as easy on the patient as possible. So what our team does, myself included, I'm a speech language pathologist. I'm also one of the mentor team on this project for LSVT Global. And so what we do is guide people through the project. So initially, if you are interested, and we have the flyer in the chat that you're welcome to pull up, and there's more details about the steps and also a register now button. And that doesn't commit you to the study. It really just commits you to talking with our fabulous research coordinator, Savannah, and she can give you more of the requirements that we're looking for. She can talk you through the steps in more detail. But that's where the flyer in the chat, I think it was also emailed out as well. We not only encourage you to take a look and perhaps hit that register now button if you're interested, but also to share. Feel free to use that document to forward out to support groups, to other patient groups, to your neurologist or your physician groups. As Dr. Ramig mentioned, we have 100 people, but we have 300 more that we are looking to enroll by April. So we definitely are excited to work on that recruiting. After talking with Savannah, our research coordinator, where you learn more about the study aims and requirements, if you are interested at that point, you meet with one of the mentor team, all of whom are trained speech language pathologists with specific expertise in voice, swallowing, and speech for those with Parkinson's. And what we do is have a nice conversation. We show you what the website looks like that you would be working from, and we do a little voice and speech screening. It's important to point out that for this study, we are looking to add to the database voices that are having difficulty being understood, being clearly heard. And so that's why we do a speech screening. We're well trained in knowing what Google is looking for the study. And those with that target voice and speech will then be enrolled and trained on the research platform. And so further details about meeting with the mentor, as I mentioned, the platform is all online. And so it's nice that you don't have to download anything or install a program onto your computer or phone or tablet. It's all web-based and it uses the cloud to transmit the data to the folks at Google, to the engineers on the project. And so it's gotten to be just very user-friendly. It's pretty intuitive. They've improved their platform over the last year and a half, and we've improved our process to make sure that it truly feels easy to navigate. And we ask that people record just your natural voice. So you don't have to do this at times when you're feeling clear, when you're feeling loud or strong. It can be actually more beneficial for the engineers to record at times when your voice perhaps is less optimal, when you know you're in an off period with your voice and speech. And because it's done from the comfort of your own home, and can be done via a computer or a tablet or even talking to the phone. It can be nice, easy data collection so that we get that target voice. And it has very intuitive icons, easy controls, and so you don't have to travel to a recording site, and you complete most of the recordings on your own time. There are a couple of appointments where you're recording with a mentor logged in with you through like a Zoom call, just like what we're doing today. And so it's very familiar, the meeting technology. It's through a Zoom. And we do a couple of these meetings to make sure the technology is working and making sense, and also that we are truly capturing a good voice sample, that there's no background noise, that the phrases, the short phrases that are presented for you to read are being read correctly. And all of this is Apple and Android compatible. So most devices, most computers are appropriate for use with this study. We do one, perhaps up to 4 quality checks of the recorded phrases, and those are pretty brief. It's only 15 minutes meeting with the mentor once you're enrolled in the study. We're also there to answer questions or address your needs throughout. Most participants complete the full research project within a couple of days, maybe even up to a week, perhaps, of that initial meeting with the mentor. And so it's not something that's very cumbersome. It doesn't have to take a lot of time out of your day, out of your week, out of your month. It's only 300 phrases that are recorded. So again, we're really excited that it's not a cumbersome or time taxing study for folks to do. And of course, as a speech language pathology team, we're always interested in motivating in making this an enjoyable experience for the patients. I must say, as a mentor, I have absolutely loved working on this project and meeting people actually from all over the world. We are working with English speakers currently and have even stretched as far as Zimbabwe, the United Kingdom. So we really have gone quite global with this experience because the advancement of the technology is appropriate to integrate those with dialects or accents, as well as a disordered voice or speech issue. But when we talk to the participants, we're also really hearing that they've enjoyed this as well. So some of the feedback from the participants is, I thought this was a great experience. I know how it is for a system to not understand when I speak. And it's refreshing to know that Google is thinking of us. And I really agree with this. I find this true as a speech clinician as well. Talk to text, asking Alexa to turn on the lights. Not only are those conveniences, but they can also really help with things of with concerns of safety, being able to not have to navigate through a dark room to turn on your lights, for example, and being able to have those smart devices do it for you because they can now understand you. I love the reach of this. I love that Google is thinking of this. Another participant said the patient needed, this was actually, I think, from an assistant that was working with a patient. The patient needed assistance with the technology. Due to vision problems, we ended up feeding the information through our smart TV via an HDMI cable, so the screen was larger. We included this feedback in the presentation as an example of how truly the mentor is not just there to help with the voice and speech, but also to help troubleshoot making the technology accessible. Many individuals have vision changes, and so we don't want that to be a deterrent or a hurdle, and to make this as easy and approachable on the caregivers helping or the patient who is self-directing themselves through the study. We love to hear that patients have enjoyed the experience and that working with a mentor really helped when we're thorough in explaining how to do it. And one even mentioned they had a few software glitches. And so they contacted the mentor. The mentor was able to get in touch with Google and get it resolved. And I tell my participants this all the time. If you ever have a question about technology or if something isn't quite working, don't stress, contact me. We are here to get that resolved. You don't have to feel like you're on your own to solve that. So having just an assistant or a helper there to make the technology work. I will say that since we've had these quotes come in when we asked for feedback about the experience, participants noted that, and I've seen the updates that Google has made to the research platform have been wonderful. They've really worked out the little kinks and little twitchy, the bugs in the system, and so it really has become less and less that people are running into glitches. And so as the video mentioned, your voice is needed. And so to be able to join Google and LSVT in Project Euphonia, as I mentioned before, we have the flyer in your chat. It's in the email as well. The register now button you will be able to access just with a click, and it brings up a contact form and lets you put in your preferred means of contact for our research coordinator Savannah to reach out. If you have just more general questions, we've also included our direct email address on that flyer. So you have a number of different ways to get in touch with us to learn more. Now, for participating, here's a list of the requirements. So having an Android or Apple tablet, phone, or computer will work with this. The only tablet I've run into that has not worked, it's not an Android or an Apple, it's the Amazon tablet, the Fire tablet, I believe it's called. That's the only one brand out there that I know of that doesn't work, but phones certainly work, computers work, and we do need those individuals with voice and speech changes that make it difficult. So if you are noticing times when people are asking you to repeat, or times when you feel like you just can't be easily understood, this is an absolutely appropriate study for you. This is what's going to make those voice recognition systems work better. Because it is a Google research project, the website is only accessible to those who enroll in the study. And so to enroll in the study, that would be completed with your mentor meeting, and it does require a Gmail address or a willingness to get one, because again, it is something that is research, it's protected, so it's all done over Google Chrome or Safari on an Apple device, and requires that Gmail address. And we're asking folks to complete the study within a week. If there are more severe issues with voice or speech, sometimes it takes a bit longer, but as a general rule of thumb, we're finding that 1 week of logging in, throughout each day, maybe several times a day, depending on availability and endurance, people are able to get it done within a couple of days up to a week. All right, and here is more of that contact information again for you. And we really are so thankful to the Parkinson's community. We're so thankful to Sharon for having us here today and helping with recruiting. Recruiting on a research project is so very vital, and getting the word out is absolutely key to doing that. And so we really thank Sharon. We thank all of you for participating and logging in today. We were talking about how it's a busy time of year for many folks, so you guys logging in today on a Sunday in December is very appreciated. And we'd love to open it up to questions at this point. If you have questions about the project that Dr. Ramig or myself can answer, we'd love to be able to do that. And so we have this nice closing slide of our whole team, not just the Project Euphonia team, but also the LSVT Loud, LSVT Global team as a whole. So I don't know if raising your hand or typing questions into the chat works best for questions. We can take them in any means.
Okay, since we have such a small group, let's turn off the screen sharing, and that way we can see each other. And just go ahead and ask questions. Unmute yourselves and talk, because we're a very small group. We can have
Perfect.
chat.
I see Laura has a question.
I do. I don't have problems with my speech any more than I used to. I used to slur my words quite a bit when I was talking too fast and too busy, and just running too fast. So it's my husband says it's not any more than I used to, but he says my voice is quieter. Does Project Euphonia track quieter voices as well as disturbed voices?
They are interested in that. There's certain characteristics that they are looking for with the quiet voice, because that is such a hallmark characteristic of people with Parkinson's. And so that's where we encourage people to go through with the mentor screening and actually working through some of the sample phrases for the study to see if that is being captured, to see if that's coming across over a computer and would be appropriate for the study. Sometimes we also notice, as you mentioned, it's a really great point, Laura, some people have times when their voice or speech is better, and then sometimes when they're, tired or stressed, or, other things are happening to affect their voice and speech. And so maybe they may have occasions when they're quiet and slurred, or having problems with articulation. So the mentor is also there to help people recognize if there's periods where that more helpful voice for the engineers could be captured, and that would be an appropriate time to log in and to do some recordings. So that's something that we've kind of worked out over the last year and a half too, that there is a variability to voice and speech and intelligibility, and capturing it when it is more of a challenge is going to be the most beneficial for the engineers. So yeah, I would encourage you, if any of you have any questions about, well, I don't know if my voice is affected, I don't know if it's hard to hear. We are accepting some mild voice and speech changes. We're doing enrollment of mild, moderate, severe, even some profoundly impacted voice and speech disorders. So a mild time when you are having more issues being understood may be very helpful.
Great, thank you.
All right, and we have Lori Elliott, another Lori. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Where are you joining us from?
From Yardley, Pennsylvania.
Great. We have a lot of Pennsylvania folks.
Yes. So coincidentally, I just started SVLT on Friday.
Wow.
So I don't know how I would, like, can you address how would I do this? Should I do it, or should I hold off on the therapy? You know, it's kind of unusual, but I figured I'd ask.
Yeah, and the timing of that is really pretty stunning, having just started that. So what we have noticed is people who are going through LSVT or just recently completed, it's a wonderful finding that those folks do tend to have too strong of a voice. And so we say it's a great problem to have. And I would never want to, try to deter someone from therapy or to put it off. Are you scheduled for the 4 weeks, 4 days a week, or was that just like the evaluation?
That was just the evaluation. We haven't done the scheduling yet. You know, it's a rough time of year.
It
And
certainly is.
it's actually one of my neighbors who just squoze me in. I had to get there at like 7:15. And then she did like the scope through the nose
Oh,
and
good.
looked at my vocal cords. And, you know, she told me that they're kind of working, like one kind of chases the other. So yeah, we haven't really done anything besides the intake.
Well, and then I would say this might be a perfect window because the scheduling often takes a little coordinating. And like you said, this time of year, sometimes we don't start therapy until after all the excitement and hubbub of the holidays. And so this might be a really great window to be able to enroll. And the nice thing with this study, unlike some other studies out there, is we can get you started pretty quickly. Of course, we follow your schedule and your availability first and foremost. But as far as our team's availability, we can capture and get someone going and completed perhaps, even by this time next week. It would be even feasible. So I think you could be in a great window for enrolling and getting assessed and started perhaps.
I think that's a great idea.
Mhm.
Yep. The other thing that's on the flyer, just a little motivation, is everybody gets a $60 gift certificate from participating in the study. So you get a little treat from Google.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a
That's
small thank
nice.
you, and it's where you can pick from different retailers. So it's not just a certificate to the Google store online. It could be they have all kinds of places, even a Visa card or restaurants like California Pizza Kitchen or Panera, or retailers like clothing stores and such. So it's their way of saying thank you. That's a great point to make.
It's interesting because I do telepsychiatry, and my patients have started to do like this
Yep.
moving,
Yep.
like
Yep.
can't hear you kind of thing. And then a couple of them said, "Oh, something's wrong with my computer. I need to make it louder." So that's kind of what drove me to start the therapy. So I think it's great that Google's doing this.
Yes, it is. It's wonderful. And as Heather said, you could just jump on this tomorrow and you'd be done in a week. And then you're queued up for whenever you can start the therapy. No, it's really, really profound, the soft voice in Parkinson's. It's just a classic early symptom of the disorder. And we're really happy you're going to get speech therapy. As Heather said, we would never tell you to not get speech therapy. So if you did this first and then speech therapy, you're on top of the game.
Yeah. And
Yes.
kudos to you too for being in tune with those little nonverbal signs that people are having to work to be to understand you. So yes, I think you're well positioned for both.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Anybody? Yeah, Eileen.
I never really thought about my voice. If anything, if I think about it, I find that I have been speaking louder, almost. I don't even know how to explain it. A lot of times I realize, gee, am I shouting at people?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether this is part of it or whether it's that my hearing is going rather than my voice. But since I don't feel that I'm exhibiting the symptoms, should I still go ahead and register or attempt to participate?
I think so. From my perspective, because I do see so much variability in people's voices throughout the day, some people find their on-off period for their medication can impact it. And then I also have had some folks who've said, you know, at the end of the day, when I'm even like lying on the couch or I'm headed to bed talking to my partner, I notice my voice gets a little tired or gets hoarse, raspy, or I'm talking to my husband in the recliner next to me and they're not understanding me. Because you can do this over a device like a phone or a tablet, it's something where we would take it step by step. So let's just hypothetically say that you enrolled, you have all the technology, having talked to Savannah, our coordinator, you meet with me or one of my teammates. The first step that we do, in addition to the screening, when we feel there might be a voice or speech characteristic occurring that would be helpful for the engineers, we have you record like 20 phrases. And then we do one of those 15-minute check-ins that I mentioned where we can zoom in with you, take a listen, and see if, all right, when you are at the end of your day, let's say, and you're reclined and lying down and recording, are we picking up something in the voice or speech that would be beneficial? So you don't have, it's not an all or nothing situation, and could get you started. So, and then assess. And we really are there to sort of go along that journey with you. And I would, also, interesting phenomenon that we see is, and I do it to an extent too, when I'm on the computer, like right now on a Zoom, I'm probably talking a little louder than I normally do, and I'm just in the house conversing. Because you're also reading phrases, and sometimes when we read, we tend to talk differently than in conversation. Sometimes those two factors, we do get these clearer voices. And so because we've worked with this for a year and a half now, we can absolutely get you in, walk you through, and have those conversations step by step with you.
Okay.
Anybody else? Diana, did you have something? You have a question or?
I think Laura had her hand up.
I know Laura did, but I want Diana to get in it. She's been very busy with taking notes.
I love it.
Taking notes.
I'm a note taker too.
Yeah. Well, I would have to think about it because I'm in speech also. Brooklyn College Speech and Hearing Center.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So yes, another example of the speech therapy coming first and foremost, and also you might take some time to assess, do I have times of the day, even when I'm trying to use my speech therapy techniques, are there times when people just aren't hearing me? And maybe that's when we capture the voice. So definitely something to consider.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I'm considering also not overloading, because I tend to do that, and I am in therapy. And let's see, like a whole search warrant for things with speech, and I think I know a few which are, adorable, and so I just want you to know that the connection takes a little bit because I have so much going on. I think, oh my God, and then I get little comments from the Glee Club.
So are you enrolled in intensive voice therapy like LSVT 4 days a week?
No, it was once a week.
Oh, okay.
Laura, I'm sorry I cut you off before, but I wanted to hear from Diana.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was wondering what kind of time commitment this project involves. How many hours does it usually take to complete the project?
That's a great question. So when we first got involved and we were figuring out how we could best help, we all put ourselves in the shoes of a patient. And so we all walked through the process to see how long it would take. 300 phrases if I sat down and just worked on it continuously, maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Now, many people won't do it in that one sitting, and they'll kind of break it up a little bit, especially if they do notice, like, okay, here is a window where my voice is at a lull, my speech is worse, my medication hasn't kicked in. I'm going to take these next 20 minutes to record, and then if my medication is kicking in, I stop recording once I feel like my voice is stronger, for example. And so with that, and also to piggyback, I think on what Diana was saying with timing and being overloaded, I have some folks who will log in for 5 minutes and do some of the recordings. And then maybe later in the day, they do another 5 minutes. And so it really is guided by your schedule, your availability, but also knowing we're capturing the voice when it's going to be helpful to the Google folks. So all told, an hour and a half. That's why most people get through it in just a couple of days. It's pretty quick. But there is that variability of some people logging in for 10 minutes at a time versus an hour.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to stop the Q&A right now, and I'm going to wrap this up. And then if you want to stay on afterwards, and if you have any more questions, feel free. So let's go to my slideshow. Okay, this is what you missed the first time around. Okay, so thank you, Lori and Heather. We give you a virtual tiara because we can't be with you in person. This was very informative. Thank you so much. And then we're going to have a break. I'm going on a cruise next Sunday. I am leaving for 3 weeks. I will be out of here for 3 weeks. So we will not have, well, we'll have something else in between, but January 23rd is our next formal meeting with Daniel Korkos, PhD, who's from Northwestern University. And just a real quick aside, I found out about him because somebody in Chicago emailed me and said, he mentioned you in his talk. And I'm going, huh? And he sends me this video and says, go to 30 minutes and 35 seconds, whatever it is. And if you see, look down here, you see facebook.com Twitchy Woman Group. And he says, and he's talking about exercise, and he says, well, there's this lady who calls herself Twitchy Woman. And he had just found me online. So I met with him in Chicago when I was there in September, and he's a hoot. You're going to enjoy him. And he will be talking about exercise, and it'll be a lot of fun. And then after that, I'm not sure, we've got a couple of other things coming up, but I don't have anything set in stone yet. Shelley and Darlene will be doing 2 Let's Chat sessions, January 2nd and 16th. They'll be taking over while I'm on my ship. And so feel free to join them just to hang out and talk about whatever you want to talk about. And then they are also running their weekday open mic on Tuesday mornings. And I have not participated since the first time they did it. They've got a very nice group. It's a small group of women that come on, and they just have a lot of fun. So if you're interested, email Shelley at savoy4.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you in the new year.